Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our ecology lesson part 2. So we started yesterday by talking about succession and how an ecosystem reestablishes a community after it's been wiped out by, let's say, a volcano or a forest fire. And we talked about whether or not succession is even possible when humans come in and do things like urbanize the area. Okay, so primary and secondary succession are concepts that pertain to how an ecosystem can recover, but after a natural disturbance, okay? Then we talked about biodiversity a little bit, and we are going to begin today by looking at some benefits of biodiversity. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's begin. So step one, of course, is grab a partner. I know I have my student here with me. Let's hope that he lasts a little longer and that there is no bird attacking a nest to distract him from this vital lesson. Okay, so here we go. So the question is this. We've talked about biodiversity, and it's literally a measure of how many different species you have in an ecosystem, okay? So why is biodiversity beneficial to an ecosystem? So fill in this blank. The more diverse an ecosystem is, the better it what? How would you finish that sentence? The more diverse an ecosystem is, the better it can. Okay, so the best answer here is the better it can withstand disturbances, disease, drought, introduction of a new species, removal of species, etc. Okay, so let's write this. So if an ecosystem has a wide variety of different species within it, if an animal gets diseased, it can handle that disturbance. Or there's a drought and some organisms die, or some species of plants cannot survive that drought. If new species get introduced and screw up the whole food web, if species get removed, it is better able to withstand these disturbances. So what would go in the next blank then? On the other side, the less diverse an ecosystem is, the more what it is. What would be the best word to describe an ecosystem that is not diverse? The more fragile it is, okay? So let's explain this concept with food webs, okay? So we've drawn food webs before, so explain this concept with a food web. Compare a simple food web to a complex food web. Remove an organism from the simple food web, what would happen? Remove an organism from a complex food web, what would happen, right? So pause, discuss with a partner, and we'll take it up in a second. Okay, so if it's a simple food web, if one species is removed, let's say due to disease, some organisms will lose a whole food source, and then they will also die, just like you guys did in your food web assignment. What did we kill? If we killed off the Arctic lupine, that resulted in the squirrel, the hare, the vole, the owl, and the fox all dying off, because this is still a small food web. Okay, if it's a complex food web, then that organism has other resources that it can eat to survive. Okay. So pause if you want to write the rest of this down, and we are going to look at two examples. Okay, let's take a deer out of this food web here. What would happen? So let's pretend we X off that deer. Okay, now you cut off the deer. Yes, maybe the mountain lion will have less food sources, and so would the coyote. But the mountain lion has 4 other organisms it could eat. The coyote has 3 other organisms it could eat. You wouldn't really notice a difference. Okay, same thing, different food web. Let's take the deer out now. Cut the deer out, what would happen? If you remove the deer, you'll notice that what's that animal? Fox, I guess, would die. And so now the lion, or whatever that animal is, no longer has the deer to eat, no longer has the fox to eat. And so 2/3 of its food source is now gone, okay? So the less diverse an ecosystem is, the more fragile it is. Okay, so the big question is this: how can we protect the biodiversity of different ecosystems in our planet? It's an ironic answer. So how would you explain it? How can we protect biodiversity? Ultimately, less of our disturbances, less of us, minimize man-made disturbances, okay? Conservation efforts, okay? So minimize man-made disturbances, because ultimately we are the ones that are the greatest risk to biodiversity. So think back to what do we do? What are our actions that can disrupt biodiversity? Or sorry, what was the term I used before? Disturb, okay, cause a disturbance that destroys biodiversity. What are our actions? We can pollute, any kind of habitat destruction. I know this is a concept I've brought up again and again and again, but everything is connected, right? So any kind of tree cutting, mining, agriculture, the big one, urbanization. And of course, this we'll talk about in another lesson. It seems like we're adding biodiversity when we introduce new species, but a lot of the time it can turn into an invasive species overtaking the ecosystem because it's fulfilled a niche that has not been made available until now, and other organisms cannot handle that shift, okay? So as you take a walk around any kind of pond, my family has shown me a new type of invasive species called phragmite, and you'll see them lining all of the ponds, and it seems like a healthy species, but essentially it is invasive. Okay, so let's take a look at Canada, the biodiversity in Canada. There are more species, so think about Canada, there are more species in blank and fewer species in blank. So where approximately in Canada are you going to find more organisms living? And where in Canada will you find less comparatively? So the summary is this. In the southern ends of Canada is where you'll find more species living. So more biodiversity in the south, less biodiversity in the north. And then fill in the however though. However, at the same time, there are also more blank here and fewer blank there. So what is this kind of domino effect? So you have more species, more diversity in the southern parts of Canada, for example, southern Ontario. But what do you also have more of in southern Ontario? People, right? So the areas of our land that are really best for biodiversity, good soil quality, good ecosystems, we plow them down to make our cities, right? Okay, so this is what is happening. The areas of Canada that have the highest biodiversity are getting cleared for farmland, for housing, okay, roads, urbanization. So this is kind of the twofold effect. The parts of Canada with most biodiversity are getting cleared, okay? And what's that other thing that we're doing? So by being in an ecosystem, what is it that we are adding to it? So we are clear cutting, we're making a place for ourselves, but also by being there, what are we also doing to the ecosystem? Simply by existing, we are polluting. Good. All right. Sorry, I think I typed it twice. Okay, so now, so we talked about the last lesson about how we are discovering about 18,000 new species every year, which is great. Okay, oh, this is a diagram just of Toronto. So take a look, okay? So this is a prime lot of land right on the water, but look what we've done, right? A better one example is actually Manhattan, okay? Okay, so Manhattan as well. I mean, this is a prime area of land right on the water, but it's been urbanized, okay? All right, so yes, we have been discovering new species, okay, at a very fast rate, but that doesn't mean that new species are coming into fruition that quickly, because at the same time, what do you think is happening to species every year? So yes, we might be discovering 18,000 new species a year, but what is also happening to those species every year? Not those species, but species out on Earth. They're also becoming extinct. So the center for biological diversity calls this an extinction crisis. It's actually said to be the 6th mass extinction event of history, okay? One of the largest ones. So there is a natural extinction rate. So even without human influence, okay, there is a natural rate at which species become extinct every year. I want you to pause and I want you to discuss how many species do you think would naturally become extinct in 1 year if there was no human interventions, okay? So what's a normal rate of extinction? Okay, so through my research, I found that it's about 1 to 5, let's say a handful, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something within that realm is a natural amount per year. Okay, so now, in fact, how many do you think we have per year? Okay, going extinct with human intervention. So we have actually hundreds going extinct every year. Okay, so not the 1 to 5, it's about somewhere within 100 to 200, okay, species going extinct a year based on human intervention, okay, or human presence. Okay, so we're going to spend our last few slides discussing species at risk. So as you know, if biodiversity counts the number of different species, the greatest threat to biodiversity is if we kill off those species. So the greatest threat to biodiversity is extinction. If a species is gone, it cannot come back. So extinct, let's write the definition of extinct. A species that no longer exists on Earth. Okay. So keeping in mind that, as I've said before, extinction is a natural process, okay? Species do become extinct. There have been major extinction events in the past. One, I think you know of. So spend a minute, pause. I will mention 2, but the one that you know of, I want you to write down how you think it happened. How did that mass extinction event occur? Of the one that we kind of all know about from TV and such, okay? So pause, think about the ones that you know, the mass extinction events of history, and try to remember how it happened, okay? So pause and I'll come back in a second. So 65 million years ago, dinosaurs became extinct. All right, so let's write that. Dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago. Now, does anyone know how? Yes, there's a lot of talk about an asteroid, but does anyone know how a simple asteroid hitting the Earth caused them to become extinct? How? So, in fact, the asteroid hit the Earth, debris fell the sky, it blocked the sun from entering, temperatures dropped to unsurvivable levels, all of those types of things, okay? So due to this asteroid impact. So again, obviously a non-human action, but extinction events can happen in history through major natural disasters like this. Now there's a few, but another one I'll just mention was the Triassic period. This is about 201 million years ago. Now, of course, you guys can do more research if there's any more data out, but right now it says that scientists are unsure as to how exactly it happened, but that the process of this extinction event took about 10,000 years. So please understand that when we say things like mass extinction events, it's not in a day, it's not even in 100 years, it's not even in 1,000 years sometimes. So even to us, what's going on in the world right now definitely will seem normal day to day. It might seem semi-normal year to year, but the rate at which species are becoming extinct from decade to decade is exponentially greater than any of these that have happened, okay? So the rate at which they're becoming extinct, think about it, if this extinction event, Triassic, took 10,000 years, that takes a lot longer than the rate that we are going at here. Okay, so what usually causes them, as I've mentioned before? some sort of catastrophic event, some natural disaster, huge volcanic eruption, an asteroid impact, anything like that is what could typically have set in motion the ball rolling for a mass extinction event in the past. But the important thing to know, sorry, I'll let you write that. But the important thing to know is between these mass extinction events, extinction rates were very low. Okay, so between these events, ecosystems are stable, sustainable, in equilibrium, balanced, right? So that's your rate of 1 to 5 species per year, very low. Okay. However, as we've said, now today, human activity has drastically increased the rate. When we encounter a new species, we will typically overexploit them to our benefit. A good example is simply when we arrived to North America 10,000 years ago. Right away, 80 species of mammals and birds went extinct. Okay. So just kind of a little timeline if you're interested. A more recent extinction timeline, we'll discuss the great auk, what else? Any other birds you might have heard of? The passenger pigeon. We will do a little assignment about the extinction of the passenger pigeon. And again, caused by human action, okay, directly. Okay, so again, back to the fact that our planet is in the 6th mass extinction event, and it is said to be the worst rate, the highest rate of species extinction since the dinosaurs. But we don't ever talk about it, or we don't even really notice it because it's happening so slowly that we don't really kind of come to terms with that. Keeping in mind the natural rate is 1 to 5 a year, but we have dozens going extinct every day. So that 100 to 200 is actually dozens going extinct every day. Okay. So give me a range. What percentage of species do you think scientists predict will be extinct by 2050? So in 30 years, scientists predict that this percentage of species will have gone extinct. So give a guess for a number. So as little as 30%, as much as 50, they predict. Okay. And one more time, we've mentioned this before, but all of our human actions are causing these extinction rates. Okay, clear cutting, causing habitat loss, introducing new species into foreign habitats, global warming, pollution. Those are some of the biggest ones. Okay, and remember, everything is interconnected. So you remove one species, another species becomes, what's the word, affected or vulnerable, okay? And it's a domino effect. So you remove one, yeah, sure, but that might increase the likelihood that another one in that ecosystem will become extinct, and therefore possibly around the world if the same disturbance is affecting the same species in the same way. Okay, so let's talk about how biologists are researching biodiversity. Okay, so we know that we want, if our ecosystem is going to be sustainable over time and stable, okay, and able to survive, it needs to have biodiversity, sure. Now, where do you think the most important place would be to conserve species? Where are scientists putting the majority of their effort preventing species extinction? Where are they focusing? Where are conservationists focusing their effort? So they are focusing their effort in the coral reefs that are now dying out because of what's it called? One second. Coral bleaching, sorry. Increased carbonic acid dissolved into the water because the warmer water temperatures, acidification of the oceans, killing the coral and all of the organisms that depend on it to survive, okay? But so the conservationists are looking at these areas. Remember how I said rainforests have 100 species of hummingbirds? So yes, tropical rainforests are experiencing a huge quantity of species going extinct now, okay? But my argument is this. these areas are already species rich. You can probably handle a killing off of 5 of those species of 100 hummingbirds and still be fine. Areas like the tundra, though, or biomes that have very little species, that is where conservation efforts should be focused, because if you remove a vital producer or consumer in that vulnerable food web, it could collapse. Okay, but right now scientists and biologists are focusing most of their time on trying to save the huge quantity of species that are becoming extinct in tropical areas. Okay, last little diagram. So we know that a species can be extinct, but there are names for other levels when they are close to being extinct and farther and farther away from extinction. What are some of these words? Okay, so try to think. So pause it. Think of all the different words we can give for how at-risk species can be for becoming extinct. All right. All right, so we are working our way down towards closer and closer to the last one, which is extinct. So they're all very closely related. The first one is called special concern or vulnerable. Okay, so sometimes you might have heard online they call it vulnerable, but in terms of our status of wildlife in Canada, we call it special concern. So right now, these, the scientists are just keeping an eye on them. They might become threatened or endangered in the future, but for now they're okay, but there's keeping a watch. So I'm going to show you some examples, and just to kind of make it fun, as I put up the picture, try to have a partner there to like yell out the organism name to see if you know what they are. So these animals are considered to be vulnerable or special concern. Okay. This guy is what? Polar bear, so cute. You might think that it's much more closer to endangered, but I have double checked and it still is only listed as vulnerable. Okay. What is this one? This is, okay, and this one. Okay, let's see what you guys know. So this guy here is a blue heron. And this one here is an Atlantic cod. Very good. So let's write these as your examples of a special concerned species. All right, so next, if you refer back to the definition of special concern, it's an organism that might become threatened. So a little worse than that is if an organism is threatened. So this one, it is likely to become endangered if no action is taken. So if nothing is changed, if conservationists do not try to, what's the word, keep some of these animals and help them reproduce, okay, they are likely going to become endangered. They will likely keep going further and further closer to extinction as time passes. Okay, so ready? Here are some threatened examples. 1, 2, 3. What is this? All right. 1, 2, 3. What? Oh, sorry, humpback whale. Okay, if you remember my last lesson, what is all that gross stuff that's growing on it called? And what type of a biotic relationship is this? So the things growing on it are called barnacles. This relationship, it benefits the barnacle, does not affect the whale. This is a, commensalistic relationship. Okay, commensalism. And this one is what? This here is a buffalo. And those are examples of threatened. Okay, now let's go into our next category, which is called endangered. These are in immediate danger of becoming the next term, which is called extirpated or extinct. So it's like right in that in between, okay, that if scientists do not save that organism, it might jump the next level and just suddenly become extinct if we do not capture it and save it and help it reproduce. Okay, so these are endangered species coming up. What is this? So owl is not good enough. Not all owls are endangered. What is this one? So this here is a barn owl. And this here, what is that? So this is not just a fox, because not all foxes are endangered, but one type of fox. And this guy, I don't think you guys will know. Okay, but here is your barn owl. So let's write that for examples. A swift fox. And this is a cricket frog, the northern cricket frog. Those are examples that I want you to write for endangered. Now, all these definitions, they all leak into one another and they're actually hard to understand. Special concern, it might become endangered. Threatened, it might become endangered. Endangered, it might become extirpated. None of that really means anything to me, but this definition is quite clear. If an animal is extirpated, what do you think that means? It's not extinct, but what? There are a lot of organisms that have been extirpated. It's the final ditch effort to keep them alive. What do you think that final ditch effort is? Extirpated is when it no longer exists in the wild. So you find them in our zoos, or you find them kind of kept by conservationists trying to make them reproduce, but you are not going to find them in the wild anymore. Okay. So these are extirpated organisms. What is this? So it's not a shark, it's not a whale. I will tell you that its snout looks like a paddle, and therefore it is named after that as a paddlefish. This one, what is this one here? The one in the middle. So this here, the paddlefish, and this guy, I forgot to make it come up. Wait, I think I added it today. Yes, gray whale. Okay. And let's finish off with a few examples of extinct species. Extinct is when a species no longer exists on Earth. And we are going to do an assignment where you guys are going to read about extinction, a tale of two extinctions is the name of the assignment. This one, what do you think that one is? I told you it's a human-caused extinction, and I mentioned it prior in this lesson. This is your passenger pigeon. It was literally overhunted, okay, to the point of becoming extinct. This here is a great auk, and this here is your sea mink. Great auk, sea mink. Okay. Please grab someone for this last moment. I mean, in my mind, you guys are having a wonderful time over there, but that's just my idealistic view. Okay, so ready? The question is this. Let's summarize. What is the greatest threat to species extinction? 1, 2, 3. Humans. Okay, that was just me, apparently. All right, and that is the theme of this whole unit. Okay, the greatest threat to species extinction. So I'm going to stop recording, say goodbye to everybody. Have a great day. Stay safe, wash your hands. That's all. Bye.